Around that time, the mod mandarins had decided the infantry were being rotated between tours too often, and it was about time that non-infantry regiments did their bit. Rightly so, in my opinion. There were far too many overweight soldiers in 12 regiments who were happy passing their time away in the mount or handing out blankets in the BQMs. The only problem was, I'd done my share. Going back might be pushing my luck, I thought, especially with some of the idiot NCOs in our mob. My mother had recently been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and my father was finding it increasingly difficult to have to look after her. This, and the thought of going back over the water to be spat at, nappied and possibly bombed, led me to decide to sign off again. I applied for the rear party. 4 months of that prior to getting out would give me ample time to sort out a job in Civvy Street. Before T Battery started Ireland training, there was a trip to the Hebrides to live fire Rapier. This was a bit surprising. I knew the IRA were well in with the Yanks, but I didn't realize they were supplying them with fighter jets. My troop commander told me that even though I was leaving, I would have a missile allocated to me, and off I set. When I got to the Hebs, I wasn't allowed anywhere near the missiles and instead spent the whole 2 weeks being ordered about by fat, bearded Hebridean women who would have looked at home in the movie Deliverance. The bastards had lied to me, but why? I was just a low-life gunner. I had to do whatever they had ordered me to do. I can only conclude that they took pleasure in messing me about. As my bloated white hands scrubbed my 100th Dixie, I realized I had made the right decision to leave this time. The army argued that it would be pointless to let me fire as opposed to a gunner who had just joined up. This overlooked the fact that once I was back on Civvy Street, I would likely be put on reserve service, and if the proverbial hit the fan in the Soviet bloc, it was quite possible I could have found myself behind the controls of a Rapier again. This negative attitude towards soldiers who have signed off destroys any hope of them changing their minds. You were just a tenpenny tin can to be kicked around by everyone above your rank, and in my case, that amounted to a lot of tin can kickers. Upon my return to Germany, I was once again stiffed by a dose of T Battery double standards. The same senior officer who had decided I wasn't worth a missile was now sending me to Northern Ireland after all, as T Battery was short-handed. So, I started Ireland training all over again from day one. Even sitting there learning the rules of engagement and basic patrolling skills. The team commander was a sergeant who acted like Frank Sinatra. Everything had to be done his way. During one day's training, I offered some advice to him when we were alone. His response was that he didn't give a toss if I'd done 100 tours of Northern Ireland. He was in charge. That was it. I decided then and there that I wasn't going anywhere with a bloke who obviously had a problem with management and would be a liability over the water. I patrolled past my accommodation window, where Scouse stood in Civvy's coffee in hand, laughing his head off, and hatched my plot to be placed on the rear party come what may. Plan A, I asked for a Troop Commander S interview and ended up in the Battery Sergeant Major S office. My story was that my father, who traveled regularly to Dublin, was worried about certain people finding out his son was a British soldier, and had asked me not to go again. This tickled the BSM Mickey Finn no end. He laughed and told me how his parents were Irish too, and it was just one of those things. I was going to Ireland at the end of the chat. March out. Plan B, I asked for an interview with the Padre and told him the same story. This time though, I added the part about my mother's illness. The Padre, having the rank of Major, went to CRBC on my behalf. End result. My name on rear party. And they say you can't beat the system. I wished T Battery luck as I waved them goodbye and passed the time before returning to civilian life. It wasn't a bad few weeks. The sergeant in charge of us was a right soft touch, and you could get away with murder. Once out in the province, a member of T Battery did something unbelievably low. The battery had been in Omagh long when IRA bombers ambushed a convoy of army coaches full of young infantry lads on their way back to England. T Battery was first on the scene of carnage and death. I remember watching them on the TV and spotting some of my mates in the footage. The lads told me later that after the bodies had been removed from the wreckage, a soldier went from coach to coach, looting the belongings of the dead. Over the years in Germany, thousands of pounds worth of personal possessions had mysteriously gone missing from our accommodation. It must have been the same guy, in my opinion. He should have been put up against the wall and shot. There was another bastard in T Battery who constantly stole from the lads in the block. He was a pad married personnel, and his favorite trick was to ask someone if he could leave his bag in their room when he was on bonko. Battery orderly non-commissioned officer duty. Later on, he would inadvertently leave his bag locked in the victim's room. He would then ask to borrow the lad's keys to get his bag, and all the money and goodies he could steal. Eventually, we all worked out what he was up to, but we couldn't prove anything. There was a lot that went on in T Battery, from junior NCO up to senior NCO level, that the officers turned a blind eye to. One gunner even had his medals stolen in 1982, and I am happy to report that this year I helped him get them back before he sadly passed away. It's a shame, but that incident of looting is one of my last memories of T Battery. It was an honor to have known the rest of those T Battery lads. Fantastic loyal soldiers, who wrote a piece of their regiment's history in the South Atlantic in 1982. If you are enjoying this, check out A.A. McNally's book Still Watching Men Burn, Fighting the PTSD War, and don't forget to like and subscribe.